What it do, anime crew? Hey man, listen, I have my faith in anime, if only for a fleeting moment, briefly restored, as I have finished yet another anime series. Every episode, I know, it's incredible. The anime YouTuber finally did it. He finally completed an anime. But here today, I'm just going to talk about Red Garden, a 2006 horror slash teen melodrama series. It's 22 episodes. It's a little bit hard to describe in terms of the genre, but if I were to recommend the show to anybody, I would say just look at it, and if you really like the aesthetic, you're really gonna like it. It takes place in New York, and it's got like this sort of not quite visual kei, but like street fashion oriented, sort of kind of gothic aesthetic to it. Not in the super traditional sense, but if you look at it, you'll see what I mean in terms of like the style. Like, I could not mistake an outfit from one of the characters in this show for an outfit in like any other show. But at the same time, every character has their own like fleshed out sense of style, to where if you just showed me outfits from the show, I'd be able to easily tell you which one goes with, which character. So it's definitely one of the stronger points in the show, that it is extremely fashion savvy, and it's got like that sort of diegetic clothing swap that's so rare in anime, where it's not that they wear different things in every scene, which is pretty rare, but it's also not that they wear the same thing in every or almost every scene. Like, each character has like a wardrobe with pieces in it that like make reappearances in outfits later, even if it's not the same full outfit. So like, you actually have like a more well-rounded sense of their sense of fashion, and I think that actually is like a really good subtle way to like characterize your characters that I've never really thought of before. It's a part of the production that got a whole lot of emphasis, which is really good, because the main drawback about the series is that it is very, very low budget. Like, the shit costed $1 to make. I wouldn't be shocked if that were the case. It's not a whole lot of animation, a lot of stills, pretty striking shot composition, extremely great outfit design. I really like the art style. They're kind of like tall, slender characters against like the tall, slender cityscape of New York with all the skyscrapers and stuff like that. There's a lot of like POV shots and like distorted POV shots. It's not bad to look at on a frame by frame basis, but there is just not a lot of movement. There's not a lot of movement happening, especially when considering like the facial expressions. It's a very melodramatic series. There are a lot of big emotions and a lot of like swelling moments of very intense voice acting that are somewhat awkwardly juxtaposed with stilted facial expressions that just simply aren't that expressive. I feel like most of the show's problems can be boiled down to that. Towards the beginning, there's like this weird thing where the girls like sing once an episode, and like 3 of the voice actresses are not good at singing, and then one of them like is good at singing. And when they all sing together, like the discrepancy in quality is really jarring. But honestly, I just found those scenes really funny. I'm not gonna, like, it was kind of cheeky, I would say. This is a really dramatic series, but weirdly cheeky as well. There are some actually like really good out of nowhere, once every few episodes, great punchlines out of nowhere that I just wasn't expecting. Visual gags, stuff like that. The series really had it all, to be honest. The best part, though, was the characters and the character writing. It's one of those series that's a bit twofold, where it's about a bunch of girls who essentially die and are forced to, in order to stay alive after they've been revived against their knowledge, they have to basically kill a bunch of other supernatural beings on like a semi-regular basis for reasons that they don't know. So there's this sort of like almost political little like mystery narrative going on one side with all the supernatural elements, and then it's all of their like home and social life and like coming of age interpersonal elements to their lives. So their lives are kind of split into 2 pieces here, and a lot of the character conflicts are about not letting or being resistant to letting those 2 lives mesh together, because it's going to hurt like a lot of people who are close to them, a lot of people who they care about. But because of this, the character writing is pretty layered, and I would say that it's a little bit unbalanced, the story that is, in the sense that like the mystery narrative doesn't move that fast, and it's not like super interesting. The actual interesting thing is the relationships, dialogue, and emotions, but that's not that important. The point is, it's like a coming of age story, I'd say, where these girls are coming into like the age of like becoming an adult, entering the workforce, and they have to essentially like reclaim their bodily autonomy. Like this company just essentially takes over their body. They're like, you're dead now. We gave you ghost bodies. Now you have to do stuff for us, and we're not going to tell you anything. Like it's a very bleak depiction of sort of growing up and becoming an adult, especially when considering that the series gets much more existential as it goes on and starts to deal with issues of memory loss and dysfunctional immortality and stuff like that. Like it really is, in a gritty and bleak way, a story about becoming an adult, which I really, really appreciated. The characters sort of fall on all sides of both the financial and social spectrum. So like there's one girl and she's like a really popular rich girl who sort of has like a bit of an underlying sense of superiority when regarding other people, but at the same time isn't heartless. Like she cares for people. She just also, has a bit of a overinflated ego, and she's very cheeky, and she doesn't have a whole ton of like patience or anything. Like if things aren't going her way, she gets a little bit frustrated at it a little bit quickly, and the way that she actually deals with the trauma of having to kill these monsters is pretty interesting, but I'll save that for now. I'll just talk about some other characters. There's one who's like her foil pretty much, and she's like poor, like in a bad housing scenario where she has to look after her two younger siblings while still going to school because both her mom and her dad are out of the house. Her mom's sick, and her dad like basically just left and never came back. And she's like very unassertive, not confident whatsoever, is like unwilling to fight, has to sort of grow a backbone throughout the series and find something that she can stand for, which is in opposition to the other girl, Rachel, whose arc is more so about becoming more understanding and sensitive to the different circumstances of like people around her. It's like a bunch of unlike people coming together and learning to see things each other's way as they have to work together towards a common goal of not being killed in an existentially terrifying manner. The other characters are there's a like somewhat sophisticated girl who's sort of grandfathered in. She's wealthy, but she's not popular. She's popular in the sense that she is a part of the system at the school called Grace, which is basically student council, and it's a type of student council which is like makes you an absolute shoo-in for a good college. Like it's an exceptionally glowing thing to have on your resume, to the point where like as the series goes on and she starts sort of becoming a little bit less involved, she has to be convinced by like several people like, hey, you need to stay in here because for the sake of your future, even if you're not feeling it right now, this is like paramount for you. And like the fact that she even has that support system in place is kind of important because she's sort of set up to win. She has a loving family, they're honestly very good to her. She has a lot of opportunities, and she's a part of Grace, so she's a part of like the upper class at the school. But she's not a person who has a ton of friends or anything like that. She's not super popular, and she hasn't had to think very much because life has gone relatively easy for her until the beginning of the show. And so she sort of becomes a lot more dissociated and highly contemplative, almost brooding, but she still is very understanding of people and has a more optimistic view on the world than some of the other girls. The last one would be the most pessimistic, which is Claire. She has a lot of familial issues. She's really poor. She's barely able to stay alive in like a studio apartment while she's working and going to school. Seen as a bit of a delinquent. The girls in Grace don't like her. She like has to put on like a tough guy persona. She's like hyper individualistic, but to a fault. And there's a character that she's friends with, and she sort of pushes him away. But it's not the most interesting relationship dynamic. There are actually quite a few really interesting relationship dynamics in the show, but she's pretty cool as well. So you got all these different girls with varied personalities. I'd be remiss if I didn't say I love Rachel. I'm in love with her. She's probably going to go on my new favorites list in terms of characters on my anime list because I think she's my new official anime crush, if I can sound like as much of a loser as possible about it. Just because, I like girls who think they're better than everybody. But, like, they're actually well-rounded and intelligent. Like, there's no digging myself out of that one. I'm just, I am fucked. But, okay, all right. But aside from that, series is really good. The finale sort of shores up a lot of the issues that I had with the production feeling a bit lackluster. It was a very bombastic finale with a lot of action that tied up all the loose ends that I personally cared about. These girls are in a battle with this guy who is part of... Okay, it's a little bit weird, but all you have to know is that these girls and this guy, their stories are of being born into 100 years old like corporate and familial conflict that they had nothing to do with, and that conflict totally screws over their futures, and they're basically just stuck between a rock and a hard place the entire time, and just the way they deal with it is the main difference between them. There's one guy who really wants his sister to live, but it means that his clan would have to focus on helping his sister, and they have all their eggs in another basket because they're running out of women in the clan and they need to like perpetuate it. So they're basically just like casting her aside to work on their like one like project that they have a lot of hope in, but then the main guy is like going crazy and he like starts sabotaging this project, but he also has a little bit of complicated emotions regarding it. But at the end of the day, all of it's outweighed by his like undying love for his sister, which is revealed to be like somewhat self-serving. It's a little bit of a myopic viewpoint, but you know, it's not something that I can totally despise. He's written as like a little bit of a scummy character, but also a little bit of a tragic character in a way that I didn't find overbearing. I didn't find it to be trying to excuse the things he's done, but also I didn't find the things he was doing to be like not understandable or like so abhorrent. It was just a really bad situation for everyone. It's a very bleak sort of like gothic story, honestly. You know, not only in the aesthetic, but in like the actual narrative of it. God, there was so much I had to say about this series, and now it's like there's too much swirling in my mind, and I can't think about any of it. But the fight scenes are pretty good. Honestly, one of the weaker things is that it's not like super violent. Like the fight scenes aren't as terrifying as they should be or could be. They're not as exhilarating as they should be or could be. They're very frank and sort of matter of fact, almost like vanilla in their portrayal. And direction, and I wonder if that's actually an intentional choice, but there's not really a lot of like super like spectacle driven grandiose moments of emotion in the visuals. It's more so just in the actual narrative and character arcs themselves. So I don't think that was necessarily super intentional. I think that was just a product of them not having too much budget, but it didn't really take too much away from it. I would say the main strengths of this show are its very strong aesthetic, especially in regards to the outfit design and really solid background art, really good settings, honestly. It has great characters with great layered interactions. They all have personal lives that they juggle with these supernatural lives as they try to uncover the mystery, and they begin to sort of become more okay with each other, learn more about and become more comfortable with working together with people who are unlike themselves as they develop their worldviews. And honestly, the dialogue, because I wasn't super sold on it at first, and it's especially hard to be when it has all that goofy singing towards the beginning, but as the group sort of like meshes together better and starts to understand each other and grow as a collective, their banter amongst each other becomes a lot more charming and effective, in my opinion. It's just a lot more interesting to watch. There are a couple of moments that came off to me as a bit preachy and a bit divorced from how optimistic or philosophical the characters would actually be. There was one scene at the cemetery towards the end that I was like, I respect the functionality of this scene for the sake of the narrative and thematic clarity, but I'm not totally sure if I love the execution of how easily all these characters came to agree upon this. Really just, like, honestly nitpicks, though. This show has everything you want. It's got a great, like, jazzy intro, 2 crazy outros, super solid aesthetic, characters that cover a bunch of different personality types, have a bunch of different types of interactions. The actual arcs, emotionally speaking, themselves are fairly fast-paced and somewhat dense, but not to the point where it's dizzying or anything like that. The mystery narrative is probably going to be appealing to some people, if any of you guys feel so inclined as to watch this. And yeah, it's just a really, really solid, I'll say it, a hidden gem of a series. I'm feeling maybe around a strong 7 on this one. And I think it's a shame that nobody knows about it. It really is a shame that nobody knows about it because it's pretty solid, and I think a lot of people could get something out of it, especially if you like stuff like. I mean, I don't like this stuff, but I've heard it compared to like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and things sort of along those lines. As long as you're not going into it anticipating like insane Sakuga fights and like a super dramatic, well fleshed out mystery narrative, I think you're gonna love it. If you go into it expecting like sort of like bleak gothic teen melodrama with a horror tinge and relatively tight writing, I think you'll really get a lot out of it. The finale was amazing. There were a lot of really memorable scenes, especially towards the end. And I have a crush on Rachel, and I'm in love with Rachel forever. So, yeah, it's pretty much everything I have to say about it. I thought I was going to be talking for like 45 minutes, but then I sat down and I only had like 15 minutes worth of stuff to say. But, all right, take it easy, y'all.